What movie is a good example of cool concept but wrong execution? World War Z. I'll scream this from the mountaintops. That book was damn near purpose written to be a 10-part HBO series. The movie was really exciting and well made. The zombies were horrifying and unstoppable. The only problem was that they took the name from the book and just made a different movie. Bright. A modern-day setting with fantasy races and characters is interesting, but it was a failure. Hancock. Comedy at the beginning was great, but the attempt to introduce a love interest and an origin in the second half was a mess. Dungeons & Dragons, 2000. A D&D movie didn't need to be serious and focused on lore, it could be silly and fun. Honor Among Thieves, 2022, showed us how to execute it better. I kinda liked the idea of In Time, but the movie wasn't really what it could have been. Jupiter Ascending, it struggled to effectively balance its grand scope with coherent storytelling. Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. I love Art Deco and the aesthetic of that era in general, but for a movie with such an exciting style plot, it was just boring. I think the casting was perfect and the acting was fine. The movie just needed more creativity in the writing room and a tighter plot. The Purge. There's a lot more that could have been unpacked about a society doing the free night of crime thing. MCU Eternals from 2021. I understand the studio ambition of trying to make something different and epic. But they have to juggle so many things, a large cast, so much lore and world building without enough time to explore it all, themes that they were trying to demonstrate it but doesn't have enough time to do it in a meaningful way, along with not enough time to build and develop the characters. All of that lead the movie to being a mess, as it feel like things happen because it have to without a proper pacing lead up to it. Like many people have said, Eternals should have been a big budget series with at least 10 episodes. That will be enough time to develop the characters and explore the lore. Downsizing. John Carter had all the potential. The actor was good too. The movie was just kinda meh. Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. That movie was 95% of the way to being a classic, a worthy spiritual successor to Fifth Element with incredibly imaginative world building and visuals. Then they absolutely blew it with some of the worst casting and character writing I've ever seen. Cara Delevingne was okay, but the guy playing Valerian was an absolute black hole of charisma, sucked the energy out of every scene he was in, which was most of them. Old. Ender's Game. The novels are brilliant with really rich lore and there's so many, these could have been what Dune is becoming nowadays. It's a huge tragedy that the first film ruined interest in the rest by fumbling the reveal and just not executing on the level it should have, because that series could have printed money for at least a decade. Passengers could have been really cool if the narrative was told from Jennifer Lawrence's character's POV. Make it a mystery horror / thriller type thing. Edit. This is not my own original thought. Nerdwriter made a video essay many years ago after hearing Doug Walker suggest it in one of his reviews. Any of the Fantastic Four movies. The Gem and the Holograms movie from 2015. I was a huge fan of the cartoon series when I was a kid, and had high hopes for the live-action movie. They really dropped the ball on that one. I believe Equilibrium would still be much more of a cult classic if they hadn't leaned quite so hard into the Matrix-style action. Chappie. Still love this movie, but there was too much Die Antwoord in this movie. They're not really the best people. The Golden Compass. Thank goodness for the show that came years later. Also thank goodness for Daphne Keane, amazing actress. Sucker Punch. Gonna get hate for this one, but Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. I both do and don't understand why people swear by this movie so much. For a Disney sequel, it was well animated, with interesting characters and decent music. but it could have been so much better. So much more interesting, and so much less cheesy. An interesting character aren't enough, they need spotlight, they need development. Vitani's heel face turn at the end would have made more sense with just a one scene of her displaying some doubt. Nuka could have been an excellent narrative foil, but instead he was turned into comic relief. The scene with Simba's nightmare still haunted me, but not because it was effective, it's because it was so cheesily done, that even as a little kid, I couldn't take it seriously. If only they had been allowed to treat the movie as an actual project and not a straight-to-video money grab, I think it would have been good. Sadly, it was not. Don't know if anyone remembers a movie called Powder, but that could be redone really nicely. In Time had such an intriguing concept of time as currency, but the execution left a lot to be desired. Jumper. It's a compelling concept, and it hints at some really interesting world building, but the actual execution kind of fizzled and fell flat. The original X-Men all the way up to Origins, Wolverine. Hugh Jackman was great, but the stories walked too far from the source material. Especially Deadpool with his mouth sewn shut. The Nick Cage movie Knowing. The first hour-ish of it was like a disaster movie and so cool. Then it turned into some Prophecy Alley's BS and they followed it up with a vague Adam and Eve reference to end the movie. I think if it stuck with disaster movie where you know dates and times and areas of disasters, it would have really been a cool movie. The Passion of the Christ. They shouldn't have executed that main guy as he seemed like quite a decent bloke. Not a movie but TV series Revolution. Amazing concept but wrong execution. Also a couple of Netflix series which I am too bored to check their names, one the one with the plane that gets lost in time and two, the one with the ship that gets also lost in time or some shit. These series have a nice basic idea that usually fuck up later on because they didn't think of a viable ending, which ends up to ridiculous mindfucks which make me lose interest. Every time threads like this come up my answer is always the same, but, antlers. The way this movie was originally teased made it look like such an interesting take on a Wendigo horror film, and I was so stoked when it finally came out. The atmosphere and cinematography were both on point, but I was ready to leave halfway through. It didn't know what kind of movie it wanted to be at all, and every single character made the dumbest possible decisions at every turn. Hell, there was hardly any Native American lore at all about the Wendigo concept. One of the biggest disappointments I've ever experienced in a theater. The body horror stuff was pretty great though. The movie Aragon. The books were amazing, the movie not so much. Yesterday, 2019. Beatles tribute film that tries too hard to be a rom-com and strays a lot from the main premise in the process. Alien Covenant. I liked Prometheus and was so looking forward to this film, but it felt like it was a cheap copy. Tenet is an awesome concept that suffered from being too in-depth. Quiet Place Day 1, they should have taken more in advance of the horrors and terrors of the first hours of one of the loudest cities in the world. Sadly they only showed 5 minutes of it in the movie, they skipped over it. Flatliners. Seemed like a terrific concept, but the movie was 100% forgettable. I'm speaking of the original, I did not see the remake, which I hear is even worse. Resident Evil seems cursed when it comes to live-action adaptations. Star Wars Episodes 7, 8, and 9. Star Wars is awesome, these episodes made Star Wars not awesome. Whatever that movie was where it was jet combat vs dragons. There was another thread about this where a Redditor who I agree wholeheartedly with that said something like, if they had set this movie during the first half of the 20th century it would have made more sense. Supersonic jets are too fast and can't dogfight a dragon, it wouldn't work. But World War II or WWI aircraft probably could do it much better. Like a squadron of Hawker Hurricanes or Fokker triplanes vs Smog, it would basically be an Iron Maiden album cover and it would be fucking awesome. Circle. A really cool idea of 100 people just waking up standing in a group and people die if they don't follow the rules.